Joanne, you were one of the 24 women on that fabled committee, that committee of 24, that was tasked with creating one organization out of the former women's mission organizations. They had the important work of forming one organization going on into the future, and the committee, of course, as you remember, was comprised of 8 women from the former Wesleyan Service Guild, which was the Methodist Women's Organization for employed women. 8 women came from the Women's Society of Christian Service, which was also a Methodist organization. And then there were 8 women who didn't belong to either organization. The decision to actually combine the two women's mission organizations had come after a few years of the Methodist Church and the Evangelical United Brethren Church uniting to become the United Methodist Church. So you all on this committee of 24 came from different areas of the country. So I would guess there were probably differences in thought because of the two previous organizations. Was it difficult to work with complete strangers? How did you all form a sense of community to get this work done?
I would have to say it was a little difficult at first because we really hadn't known each other. We did come at it from different ways. I never had been a part of the Wesleyan Service Guild, but of the what we call WSCS. I guess really when we got down to it, there were differences, but the thing that probably held us together was after we started working on the purpose. And when we all brought our way of thinking to the purpose, that it made us more of a community. We still had our differences, of course, but if we would let ourselves get back down to that, it would kind of make us a pretty good group.
How did you get the agendas to become unified so that one organization could be formed?
You know, there was one thing that all the way through and even at the end seemed to be the hard thing, and that was when to have meetings because of the working women couldn't come in the daytime and the other women didn't like to go at nighttime. And I would say that that was one of the big hang-ups of the whole discussion. I think another strain that came to us from our church was that everybody had seemed to get an idea that the women's organization was to furnish the parsonage and have serve coffee and all of that. And so those were two things that they sound insignificant, but they actually were pretty big things for us to think about. I had another funny thing happen when we were doing away with the central jurisdiction and we were talking about having meetings. I said, see, the situation is not all black, and this one little central jurisdiction woman said, that's mighty white of you. And so I could see, you know, some of the even other kinds of things that were standing in the way, but we knew it was going to take work. We knew that when we got down to the purpose that it was worth whatever we had to do if we could carry out that purpose.
In the 70s, women were still adjusting to the many new roles they found themselves in, not only as mothers, but as working women or working mothers. So did you feel, Joanne, that you were pushing the envelope?
I would say that the church was as much into this as were all the other things. We had a mission study on the role of women. We had a national seminar in many ways. We had the status and role of women. We had working with those women who had gone on and been fully ordained. So we were doing a lot in this period, pushing the envelope as hard as we could push it.
And you, I believe, took a courageous step at General Conference. What did you do?
Yes, at General Conference, it was the last year of the fight for the Equal Rights Amendment, and they were not going to put anything about that in the discipline. And I felt it was very important that it be there, especially that year. And so at 2 a.m. the last day of General Conference in Indianapolis, I got up, raised my hand, got the bishop's attention, and spoke on the floor of General Conference to be sure that that was in the Book of Discipline, that we were for the Equal Rights Amendment.
On another front, the 1970s were still a time of forging new ways towards equality. So tell me about how the struggle for the Equal Rights Amendment affected you personally, and how did it affect your conference, the Southwest Texas Conference?
Well, in my mind, the two things, Equal Rights Amendment and the gaining of full clergy rights for women in our conference, those two things seem to kind of go together. And one of them I feel very good about, and I feel like United Methodist Women have, not only did they help make that possible by the some 9 million votes at General Conference, but how we worked to bring the clergy women fully into the conference was a success. But I kind of felt deflated about the Equal Rights Amendment because it didn't pass. I felt like I had a big winner and a big loser too, and I felt that the ordination of women had a big effect on our conference in many, many ways, and I hope we're still helping that along.
May Hudson Gray once said that leadership development has been an important aspect, maybe even a crucial aspect, of our organization. How did United Methodist Women develop you as a leader?
When I was a young, pregnant, 23-year-old woman, I went to my first Women's Society of Christian Service because of an invitation in the church bulletin. I went that first time. The women were accepting. They were talking about interesting things. And most of all, they asked me if I would lead a study. I'd been there one time. The study was Understanding the Bible by Georgia Harkness. And to think that those women trusted me with that important word, and I was hooked. That was some 73 years ago. We who are leaders, who need to be accepting and welcoming and supportive of women so that they can become leaders. I'd like to say a word about how important our studies have been through the years. I think the United Methodist Women studies have made a difference in the world. We studied about China and realized that they needed to be a part of the United Nations, and so we studied that, and then China was admitted to the UN. We studied about the people and churches of the USSR because we prayed for the people and came to know them and understand the church. The church opened up in the USSR, and the Berlin Wall fell, and we studied about apartheid and the people of South Africa, and that went right along with what was going on in the country then. And so apartheid fell, and South Africa became what it became. And I like to think that it's because we really put ourselves into studies and pray for the people and come to know the people, and it makes a difference in the world. Count your blessings, name them one by one, and it'll surprise you what the Lord has done through us, our studies, and all these other ways that we have boldly reached out to the world. An important part of our legacy, I think, is some of the places like the place across from the UN, the place down the street from the Capitol, Scarrett Bennett, Alma Matthews House in New York, even Wesley Community Centers that began because of a small gift of $45 from a little town and a little unit in Robstown that has now developed into one of the only full-time places for homeless women in the Corpus Christi area. I just think that our legacy is so many things. It's people, it's places, it's studies, it's all these blessings that have come to us because of what women through the years have done when they follow God's call through Jesus Christ. And so I hope we'll always remain open to the Holy Spirit's presenting us with calls.
Today, we still have issues to contend with. They might be immigration, maternal health, economic justice, still seeking racial justice. What are your hopes regarding some of the social justice issues they find themselves working on today?
Well, I would hope that we would always be open to finding a way to help in issues. You know, I was very pleased when we took the Charter for Racial Justice to General Conference and made that a concern for the whole church. You know, I still think back on the Alma Matthews houses, our way back in those days of working with immigrant women, and how Alma Matthews herself was involved in that. I believe that we can never say, you know, I wish we could say we had a study on poverty and in the next year poverty went away, or we spent this year on something else and it went away, but that we would just keep on keeping on, because that's what we're called to do. That's what our legacy has been, and that's what our future. Now we need to plan that it too will meet the needs of future generations. Always keep yourself open to hearing the call, to heeding the call, to making the call your own thing to work with, and see that it is not ours to do alone, but that as we seek to answer God's call, God will work with us. God will bless us, and God will make us a part of the future.
Joanne, I've had such a good time listening to you and hearing your stories and reflecting on the gift you are to United Methodist Women over all these years of service. Thank you.
Well, thank the United Methodist Women who have given me many gifts and who have made a big difference in my life.